The rain struck the windows like it wanted in, but inside, the apartment was warm. Amelia sat curled on the edge of a faded brown couch, knees to her chest, a blanket wrapped tight around her like armor. She was trying not to cry again. She had promised herself she wouldn't, not for him, not for the man who had proposed with hollow words and broken her with silence. The ring he gave her lay on the kitchen counter, still glinting under the overhead light like it had the right to shine. It had been a week since she left Adam, or rather, since Adam left her by choosing everything else over her. His work, his ambition, his growing indifference. He stopped seeing her, even when she was right in front of him. Amelia had fought for him until her fists bled metaphorically and then literally, the night she threw a glass in rage and it shattered against the wall. But this story wasn't about Adam. It started again the day the stranger showed up at her bookstore. He walked in like he'd already been there 100 times, wearing a dark coat soaked at the edges and eyes that seemed carved from something ancient and honest. He didn't smile when he looked at her. He just looked, as if he was trying to figure out if she was real. "You have a section for books that were never meant to be written?" he asked, voice low, like gravel warmed in honey. She blinked. "What do you mean by that?" "Books that hurt to read. Books that change you." Amelia, against every reasonable part of her brain, stood up and led him to the farthest corner. "The lights were dimmer here. This shelf ruins people," she said, only half joking. "Welcome to heartbreak, betrayal, and whatever's left after." He didn't laugh. He picked up a title with shaking fingers, like the spine might snap under his touch. "Perfect." He visited again the next day, and the day after that. Sometimes he bought a book. Sometimes he just read in silence. Sometimes he didn't even read, he just sat there across from her, drinking black coffee from a chipped mug and watching the world collapse behind his eyes. Amelia didn't ask questions, but she wanted to. His name was Elias. She found that out on the 4th day, when he placed a note inside a book she had recommended and slid it toward her without a word. She opened it later when he'd left. "There's something in you that understands the quiet. I see it. That matters." That was when the shift started. The way she dressed changed, softer sweaters, hair left loose. She wasn't trying to impress him, she told herself. She just felt more like herself when he was there. Then came the first night he stayed past closing. A storm had blacked out half the city. Amelia lit candles and played an old record on a crank player that barely worked. Elias didn't ask if he could stay. He just looked out at the storm, then back at her, and said, "May I read to you?" She nodded. He chose a poem, not about love, about the ache of being seen too late. When he read, his voice broke in places that weren't meant to break. She didn't ask why, but when he stopped, she said softly, "You can tell me what's breaking you." His reply was a whisper. "What if you became part of it?" She didn't understand then. Not really. The next morning, the storm was gone, but Elias wasn't. She searched the city. She called hospitals. She waited at the store every day like a girl waiting for a promise to return. And then, 10 days later, he returned. His coat was torn, his face bruised, and when she opened the door to him, the air changed. "I wanted to stay away," he said, "but I made a mistake. I thought I could protect you by leaving." "Protect me from what?" He hesitated. "From who I am when I have to fight." She shook her head. "What does that mean?" "I wasn't a good man before I met you. I did things for money, for revenge, for justice. I walked away from that world, but it didn't walk away from me." She stared at him, heart hammering like it wanted to leap free from her chest. "I left because someone found me. They wanted to use you to hurt me." "What do you mean, use me?" She whispered. "They followed me here, Amelia." And then the lights in the shop flickered. The front door creaked open slowly even though she knew she had locked it. Elias pulled her close, his voice fierce and low. "Stay behind me. Don't say a word." But before she could move, a voice echoed from the doorway. "So this is the girl you risked everything for?" Amelia turned slowly, pulse frozen in her throat. A man stood there, smiling coldly. "I came to see what made you weak, Elias." I expected more. And then Elias did something she'd never seen before. He dropped his jacket, revealing the pistol strapped to his side, the scars on his shoulder, the tattoo burned into his wrist, a wolf surrounded by flame. "Leave," Elias growled, "or I end this, right here." The stranger didn't flinch. He looked at Amelia and said, "You don't know who he really is, do you?" But before she could speak, Elias pulled the trigger. Just once. The sound was deafening, and then the stranger laughed. Because the bullet had gone through his chest clean, but he was still standing. Amelia gasped. What are you?" she whispered. The stranger grinned wider. "You'll find out. When he breaks your heart like he broke everything else." And then he vanished, like smoke, and Elias, shaking, turned to her with something terrifying in his eyes. "I made you mine, but I never told you what that really means." Amelia's breath caught in her throat as the stranger disappeared into the shadows, leaving a silence heavy enough to drown in. Elias stood rigid, pistol still warm in his hand, eyes flicking over the empty doorway as if the darkness itself might answer questions better left unasked. The weight of his words pressed down on her chest, squeezing until she could barely think. What did it mean that he made her his in ways he never explained? And what dangers still lurked, tethered to the man she was slowly coming to trust? Days passed, each one stretching like a wound that refused to heal. Elias kept his distance, the silence between them thick with things unspoken. But Amelia noticed the cracked small tremors beneath his calm facade. His nights were restless, haunted by shadows only he seemed to see. And yet, when she looked into his eyes, she found a flicker of something fierce, something desperate. One evening, as rain once again drummed on the window panes, Elias finally spoke. His voice was low, brittle. "There's a line I crossed. A choice I made that changed everything. I wanted to protect you from the truth, but maybe you deserve to know." Amelia nodded, her heart pounding as if warning her to run or to leap into whatever storm awaited. He told her about the past, the debts owed, the battles fought in silence, the lives tangled in webs of violence and betrayal. The wolf on his wrist wasn't just a tattoo. It was a mark of the pack he once belonged to, a shadowy group that dealt in secrets and blood. He had walked away, yes, but the pack never forgot. And now, by loving her, by making her his, he had put her in the crosshairs of that darkness. Amelia felt the ground shift beneath her feet. She remembered her own past, the scars she hid behind smiles, the nights she learned that love could be a battlefield as fierce as any war. She saw now how their broken histories had collided, binding them tighter than she ever imagined. That night, Elias revealed another secret. "I'm not just running from them. I'm running towards something. Redemption, maybe, or revenge. I don't know which will catch me first." Amelia reached out, brushing her fingers against the wolf mark, tracing the flames. "Then let me run with you." He looked at her, shock and something deeper, hope, flickering in his eyes. But before he could answer, her phone buzzed. A message. No sender, no words, just a single image. It was a photo of her bookstore, taken just hours ago. And standing in the doorway, barely visible in the dark, was the stranger who had vanished that night. Amelia's blood ran cold. The screen flickered and went dark. Elias grabbed her hand, pulling her close. "They're closer than we thought. And now, you're not just mine in ways that mattered before. You're mine in ways that could destroy us both." As the city's lights blinked through the rain, Amelia understood the truth she had been avoiding. Love had made her his, but it had also made her a target. And this time, there was no running away. The days that followed were a blur of whispered plans and stolen moments. Amelia and Elias moved like shadows, always watching, always waiting. The threat wasn't just a vague danger anymore, it was a storm gathering on the horizon, dark and relentless. Elias kept his gun close, his eyes sharper than ever, but there was something more urgent in his movements. A mission, a promise to himself that he would protect Amelia at all costs, no matter what price he paid. One rainy afternoon, as Amelia closed the shop early, Elias pulled her into a narrow alley behind the bookstore. His voice was urgent, trembling with something she couldn't name. "There's a place, somewhere we can be safe, at least for a while, but getting there won't be easy." She nodded, heart pounding. "I'm ready." The journey was tense, every turn held the possibility of betrayal, every shadow a potential enemy. But when they arrived, the place was nothing like Amelia expected. It was an old cabin hidden deep in the woods, walls thick with age and stories, the air heavy with pine and silence. For the first time since he appeared in her life, Elias looked almost peaceful. That night, as a fire crackled between them, Amelia saw a new side of him, vulnerable and raw. He told her about the night he had left the pack, the violence he had walked away from, and the woman he had tried to become for her. His voice cracked as he spoke of regrets and the cost of freedom. Amelia reached out, touching his face. You don't have to be alone in this. He shook his head, eyes dark with fear. If they find you, they find me. And no one I care about gets to live through that. Just as the fire seemed to burn away their fears, a sudden noise shattered the calm. The cabin door slammed open. Amelia screamed as figures stepped inside, faces obscured by shadows but eyes cold and merciless. Elias stood, gun raised, voice sharp. You came for me. Now you'll face the consequences. But then one of the figures spoke, voice chillingly familiar. We don't want to hurt her. We want him to choose. Amelia's heart stopped. Choose what? The leader stepped forward, pulling back his hood. It was a man Elias knew too well, their past, their pain, their darkest secret. Will you come back to us, Elias? Or will you burn everything to the ground? Elias hesitated, torn between the man he used to be and the man he wanted to be for Amelia. Amelia whispered, whatever you choose, I'm with you. The man's smile was a blade. Then you'll both have to live with what comes next. And before anyone could move, the cabin exploded into flames, trapping them inside. Smoke filled the room. Panic seized Amelia's lungs. She grabbed Elias's hand, their fingers intertwining like lifelines. As the fire closed in, Elias's eyes locked with hers, fierce and unyielding. I made you mine in every way that mattered. And I'll never let you go. But the flames didn't care about promises. They only consumed. The smoke clawed at Amelia's throat, choking her breaths as the cabin burned around them. Panic surged through her veins, but Elias's grip was steady, unbreakable. He pulled her toward the narrow back window, the only escape from the inferno that was devouring their sanctuary. Hold on, he urged, breaking the glass with a force born of desperation. The cold night air rushed in, stinging her lungs like a bitter promise. They climbed through, coughing, gasping, hearts pounding in sync with the crackling blaze behind them. Once outside, Elias pulled her close beneath the shivering stars. The fire cast flickering shadows over his face, painting his scars with light and darkness. Amelia's mind raced with questions, fear clashing with the fierce pulse of love that refused to die. What now? She whispered, voice trembling. Elias's jaw tightened. We fight. This isn't over, not by a long shot. But you made me want something different, someone better. Her fingers traced the jagged scar over his wrist. You made me yours in every way that mattered, not just with promises or rings, but with everything. His eyes softened, holding hers like they were the only truth left in the world. Then we survive, together. Suddenly, the quiet shattered. A faint rustling from the trees, figures emerging from the shadows more than before, and closer. Elias shoved Amelia behind him, weapon ready. They never give up. One figure stepped forward. It was a woman, fierce eyes and a cold smile that promised no mercy. You think you can outrun your past? You made her yours, Elias. But can you protect her from what's coming? Amelia swallowed hard, heart hammering. This was bigger than love, bigger than just two people. This was a war they had been pulled into, a battle fought in silence and blood. As the first shots rang out, Elias pulled her down, whispering urgently, no matter what, I'm yours. In every way that matters. And in the dark woods, beneath a sky heavy with rain, Amelia realized that love was their only weapon and their only chance. The gunfire echoed through the trees, sharp and unforgiving, a deadly rhythm that made Amelia's heart pound like a war drum. She pressed close to Elias, every nerve alight with fear and fierce determination. They moved as one, slipping through the shadows, chasing survival with every breath. The woman with the cold smile was relentless, leading the hunt like a ghost always, just out of reach, yet closing in with every step. They reached the edge of a forgotten clearing, moonlight spilling over broken stones and tangled roots. Elias halted, eyes scanning the darkness. We need to make a stand here, he said, voice low but steady. I can't keep running. Not when they want you. Amelia nodded, fists clenched. Then let's end this. The air thickened with tension. Elias loaded his gun, every movement precise, while Amelia searched the ground for anything they could use. A broken branch, a jagged rock, anything. Then, out of the shadows, a whispered voice broke the silence. Elias, you think you're ready to face what's buried? Amelia turned sharply, but the voice vanished before she could see its owner. Who was that? She asked, unease prickling her skin. Elias's eyes darkened. An old ghost, Someone from a past I thought was dead. The past. It had been clawing at them from the start, secrets buried deep but never forgotten. Suddenly, a flare shot into the sky, bright and alarming. The woman with the cold smile emerged, flanked by others, weapons raised. Last chance, Elias. Give her up, or watch her become collateral. His finger tightened on the trigger. Never. Shots flew, echoing like thunder. Amidst the chaos, Amelia saw Elias fall, blood blooming across his chest like a dark flower. She screamed, rushing to him, tears blurring her vision. He grasped her hand weakly, voice strained but filled with fierce love. I made you mine, every way that mattered. That's not changing now. Her fingers trembled as she pressed against his wound, refusing to let go. The enemy closed in. But Elias's eyes locked onto hers one last time, a silent vow that their bond was unbreakable, even in death. And then, just as the world faded, a new sound cut through the night, the roar of engines, a promise of rescue or ruin. Amelia's heart shattered and soared all at once, because love, she realized, was never just about holding on. Sometimes, it was about fighting back when everything else was lost. Amelia's scream echoed through the night as Elias's body grew still beneath her trembling hands. The enemy closed in, shadows lengthening like dark tendrils ready to snatch her away. But then, roaring engines shattered the silence, headlights cutting through the trees like swords of light. Figures emerged, not the hunters but saviors. A squad of strangers with weapons trained and orders clear. Protect the woman, avenge the fallen. Amelia's vision blurred with tears and disbelief as she was pulled to safety. Her heart pounded not just with grief, but with something fierce, something alive. The strangers spoke in hurried whispers, revealing a secret network that had been watching Elias, waiting for the right moment to strike back at the pack that hunted him. One woman approached, eyes sharp and kind. He made you his in every way that mattered, she said softly. That kind of bond isn't easy to break. We're here to help you finish what he started. Amelia nodded, grief turning into resolve. She had lost him, but she wasn't going to lose herself or the fight. In the days that followed, she trained with the strangers, learning the skills Elias never wanted her to have but knew she'd need. The bookstore was gone, the cabin burned, but something stronger had taken root, a promise. To survive, to fight, to honor Elias by becoming the woman worthy of his love. One night, as she practiced in the shadows, a memory hit her, a flashback of Elias whispering, I made you mine, but not to cage you, to set us both free. That truth burned inside her. Love had made her his, yes, but it had also made her unstoppable. The war was far from over. The pack still hunted. The shadows still whispered. But Amelia stood taller now, every scar a story, every breath a rebellion, and deep inside, where pain and hope tangled, she knew one thing for sure: he had made her his in every way that mattered, and she was ready to claim that love on her own terms. The dawn broke slow and cold, painting the city in muted grays as Amelia stood on a rooftop overlooking the streets below. The wind tugged at her hair, carrying with it the distant hum of a world that didn't know the battles fought in shadows. She clenched her fists, feeling the weight of every promise, every scar, every whispered word from Elias echoing inside her. She was no longer the frightened woman who had hidden behind books and broken dreams. She was a force forged by love and loss, by fire and fight. The pack still hunted, yes, but Amelia had learned to move unseen, strike hard, and vanish like smoke on the wind. Her phone buzzed, a message, no sender. You're stronger than he ever was. We'll meet again. Her heart hammered not with fear, but with a fierce, unshakable resolve. Because love had made her his in every way that mattered, but it had also made her hers. Amelia smiled, a curve of defiance and hope. The past was behind her. The future was hers to write. And somewhere, beyond the city's reach, a pair of eyes watched, cold, calculating, and wary of the woman who had claimed her destiny. The fight wasn't over, but this time, Amelia was ready, because she was his. And now, she was her own, and that mattered more than anything.